Our film starts with a couple talking about how they're in love with each other, but her parents want her to marry her cousin. She tries to tell her parents that she's in love with the guy whose name is Gustavo, but they are stone set on their arranged marriage, especially since they don't know Gustavo. The woman, Ofelia, tries to convince Gustavo to meet her parents, but he turns her down. She says goodbye and ends up marrying her cousin Eduardo. That night, the newlyweds go to bed together. Gustavo shows up in their room, looking like Dracula. He stabs Eduardo in the throat with a knife, then feeds on Ofelia. Next, we see Gustavo at a cemetery at dusk. The dirt parts and the coffin opens, revealing Ofelia, who is now a vampire. Fast forward to the present, i.e., the 1960s, and we see a bunch of young partygoers basically partying and sightseeing. Eventually, their taxi runs out of gas on the side of the road. To make matters worse, a storm starts brewing. They decide to go walking and find an old abandoned house. One of the guys decides to go searching for food, which seems like a pretty bad idea, being that the house is abandoned and any food would probably not be edible, but maybe it's Castlevania turkey and a wall rules. That's when he's approached by a creepy guy with a lamp. The guy goes back to the rest of the crew and lets them know about creepy lamp guy being in the house, and they follow him back looking for him, but instead he's gone and they find a dining room with a wine bottle which has been spiked with something. Anyway, no one finds any of that suspicious, so they all drink the wine and continue partying. As Yellow Shirt Guy tries to go to bed with his girlfriend, he hears something that sounds like a female and goes to check what it is. Meanwhile, we see Gustavo sneak in and feed on one of the women. Yellow Shirt Guy continues to search the house, and that's when he's presented with Ofelia. She fangs out at him, but being that she's hot, his reaction isn't fear at all. I mean, let's be real, most guys aren't running from that. She tells Yellow Shirt Guy that she needs help before they drop trowel and sleep together. When he wakes up the next day, he's alone. We then see the cabbie siphon fuel from the cab and drive up. He yells into a megaphone for everyone to get up, but only Yellow Shirt Guy shows up. They try to call for the girls, but the girls don't show. The guys go around the property looking for the girls, and one of them finds a shoe and tells Yellow Shirt Guy, who we know now is Raul. They decide to drive off, thinking the girls must have gone off on their own to head back to town. As they're driving, they see Creepy Lamp Guy, so Raul tells the driver to follow him. Creepy Lamp Guy takes off, and they take down his license plate. They then head to the local authorities, where Raul talks to the police commissioner about the girls being missing. The police are pretty much no help, as they claim no one lives in the house they slept in, and the license plate they reported also isn't registered to any car. The commissioner says they're going to put out an APB for the car and send men to search the house, and gives Raul and the other guy permission to go as well. When they get to the house, Raul looks around just to find the place cleaned out and just a portrait of Ofelia, but as he checks it, he does see a piece of one of the wine glasses one of the girls threw at the picture. We then see Ofelia hanging out in a room with the two girls lying on beds. At dusk, we see Raul lying in a bed in his hotel room where a very pale Laura shows up in his window. He happily hugs her and asks her what happened, but she just says she's cold and faints. Raul goes to call the front desk to get a doctor, but then we see it's Creepy Lamp Guy he reaches. When the doctor shows up, it's Gustavo, who then puts her in a trance before she can ID him. He gives Raul some medicine and tells him to give it to her every 2 hours. Late that night, Laura starts freaking out, so he gives her the medicine and goes to call the front desk again, but the real front desk clerk tells him he has no clue what he's talking about and that there is no doctor in the hotel. He then asks to get in contact with a Buenos Aires number instead, which belongs to Laura's brother. After hanging up, he then tries to get Laura to remember what happened to her, which goes nowhere. Eventually, Laura's brother arrives from Buenos Aires, and Raul gives him the same recap I'm basically giving you right now. We then go to a scene where we see Ofelia and Gustavo walking in the woods. We find out that Ofelia isn't that big on being turned into a vampire against her will, but Gustavo wasn't too big on losing her to Eduardo. Ofelia cries about now having to die forever before Gustavo does his hypnosis deal so he can basically motorboat her. Again, I get it. At the hospital, we see Raul and Laura's brother checking on Laura. She turns her head and we see bite marks. After they leave, Raul tries to tell Laura's brother that it had to be a vampire, which of course Laura's brother doesn't believe and tells him he's crazy. That's when Raul gets a call that one of the other girls, Beba, has been found. They head to a cemetery where the police say she was in an open grave, but she's alive and will recover, but Raul finds bite marks on her as well. When she gets to the hospital, we see the window is open. That's when Gustavo appears. Before Gustavo gets to her, she presses the call button and a nurse gets to the room in the nick of time. They call Raul and company back and tell them that Beba also lacked blood. The doctor says she was recovering but now seems to be back in shock as we see her, much like Laura, freaking out. They question whether the doctor's seen anyone come in or out of the room, but after the doctor denies seeing anyone, Raul was told that the commissioner wants to see him as there has been an arrest and they want Raul to identify him. By the time they get to the guy, the townspeople have beat him to a pulp, but Raul identifies that he is not Creepy Lamp Guy. He then heads back to the hospital to see Laura, who is now up and talking. They discuss the whole vampire thing, and she wonders whether that means she's going to turn into one. He tells her everything will be fine, and they'll head back to Buenos Aires as soon as everything is over to get married. After a scene where the hospital staff freaks out over the guy who was beat disappearing out the window, we see Beba come through Raul and Laura's window freaking out. I bet these vampires are going to hate it when air conditioning is invented and everyone stops leaving their window open. Anyway, back to her room she goes for another blood transfusion, while Laura's brother asks to be taken to the abandoned house, where he goes to look around. He eventually goes out to a balcony where he sees Ofelia walking. She heads in the house and strips. Laura's brother walks in and they screw as well. During it she hears something, and when she turns she sees visions of Eduardo. She gets up and grabs a knife from the ghost, and then tells Laura's brother not to get any closer as she doesn't want to hurt him, and it's time for her to be free. She heads to the coffin where Gustavo is and stabs him in the heart, then stabs herself. The film ends with the two bodies getting cremated, but as everyone leaves, Creepy Lamp Guy opens the furnace and two bats fly out. Thanks for watching. If you like these recaps, please leave a like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to know every time I update. There is now an option to be a channel member where you'll get access to exclusive recaps from late night vampire catalogs like Showtime, Cinemax After Dark, USA Up All Night, and much more. If you want to help my channel grow, please check out my Patreon, where members can get exclusive content that can't be uploaded on YouTube, along with download options. Link is in the description.